As a kid, Seth MacFarlane dreamt of making animations, and let's say dreams do come true, because he made Family Guy, a show that broke all the rules and became an instant pop culture giant. But then at its peak, he walked away. Now, why would a creator abandon his own legacy? And in his absence, why does Family Guy feel so broken now? Well, let's start from the very beginning. Before Family Guy became a household name and a cornerstone of edgy adult animation, it was just a dream, sketched in the margins of a college student's notebook. For Seth MacFarlane, animation wasn't a side hobby, it was the main plan. He knew from a young age that he wanted to be a cartoonist. While most kids were watching Saturday morning cartoons, MacFarlane was studying them, breaking down their timing, their visual language, and how the jokes landed in a way that fascinated him deeply. Then in the mid-90s, while studying animation at the Rhode Island School of Design, MacFarlane created a thesis film called The Life of Larry, a short that, in hindsight, was essentially the proto-Family Guy. It featured a cynical, middle-aged man and his talking dog, with a kind of random cutaway gags and sharp commentary that would later become the show's trademark. If anyone had told him at the time that this would be the initial blueprint from which Family Guy would emerge, he probably never would have believed it. This student film caught the attention of Hanna-Barbera, where MacFarlane was soon hired as a writer and storyboard artist.
And then I conceived that to be a pilot that would get me to Hollywood. Hanna-Barbera saw that film.
He worked on shows like Johnny Bravo and Dexter's Laboratory, but his vision didn't stop there. He wanted to create something of his own. Around this time, Fox had found massive success with adult-targeted animated sitcoms like The Simpsons and King of the Hill. These shows proved that animation wasn't just for kids, and there was a growing demand for more offbeat, bold content that could take risks live-action sitcoms couldn't.
Daddy, what do taxes pay for?
Oh, why everything. Policemen, trees, sunshine, and let's not forget the folks who just don't feel like working, God bless them.
Sensing an opportunity and perhaps unintentionally shaping the future of animated comedy, MacFarlane reworked The Life of Larry into Family Guy. Fox picked it up in 1999, and just like that, Peter Griffin, a louder, dumber Larry with even less impulse control, was unleashed onto primetime television.
Then I had that job as the sneeze guard for the salad bar at that restaurant. Take it outside, lady.
But then, MacFarlane never set out to create a show that would last for decades. Family Guy was a passion project, a quirky, fast-paced, gag-heavy show that pushed the limits of what could be aired on network television, and fans loved it. The show didn't just poke fun at pop culture, it exploded it, twisted it, and rebuilt it into chaotic, often offensive punchlines. Its brash language, unapologetic tone, and fourth-wall breaking gags made it stand out in a sea of sitcoms trying to play it safe.
Well, we all know how this goes. I'm doing it!
From the beginning, Family Guy wasn't afraid to touch the third rail of comedy. Political correctness, not in quahog. Religion, race, sexuality, politics, everything was fair game, and MacFarlane's writing team knew exactly how to dance on the edge of controversy. This wasn't just a show about a dysfunctional cartoon family, it was a weaponized comedy machine, ready to fire a joke every 10 seconds, whether it landed, misfired, or blew up in the audience's face. Despite its growing cult following, Family Guy stumbled out of the gate in terms of ratings. After just 3 seasons, Fox pulled the plug in 2002. At that point, most shows would quietly disappear into syndication or obscurity, but not this one. Thanks to strong DVD sales and an unexpected surge in viewership on Adult Swim reruns, the show's fanbase only grew louder and more loyal. It was this passionate groundswell that led to the show's unprecedented revival in 2005, a rare feat in television. Seth MacFarlane didn't just get his show back, he became a TV rebel who had beat the system. During this era, MacFarlane's fingerprints were on everything. He voiced Peter Griffin, Stewie, Brian Quagmire, and several recurring characters. He was in the writer's room, shaping storylines and dialogue.
How you doing there, big guy? You holding up all right? You want a soda?
He directed episodes, contributed to musical numbers, and helped define the show's razor-sharp pacing. This wasn't just a paycheck for him, it was a creative laboratory where he could experiment with absurdist humor, political satire, and social commentary, all while breaking the rules of conventional sitcom storytelling.
What are you doing? Oh, surely, Jerome, you don't want to stay in the same house as a ghost who carries a torch around. Ooh, fire ghost!
The first 10 seasons, often referred to by longtime fans as the golden years, represent a time when Family Guy felt fresh, fearless, and driven by a singular creative vision. There was a coherence to the madness. The gags were fast, but smart. The characters, while cartoonish, had enough consistency to ground the show emotionally when it wanted to think of episodes like Brian and Stewie or Death is a Bitch. Even its darkest jokes had a structure to them, a rhythm you could feel under the chaos. That rhythm was Seth MacFarlane.
Mom! 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 Mommy! Mommy! Mama! Mama! Mama!
What?
Hi.
And yet, the The very thing that made Family Guy so successful, MacFarlane's creative energy, was also a limited resource. As the show continued, so did the demand on his time and attention. He wasn't just voicing multiple leads anymore, he was expanding. New projects, new deals, new opportunities. The dream that had launched Family Guy was beginning to stretch into other directions. But before that happened, the show had solidified itself as a cornerstone of adult animation, and Seth MacFarlane as one of its boldest architects. And yet, when the structure of the show started declining, it was proof that its key architect was no longer in the building. When Family Guy came back from the dead in 2005, nobody was more surprised than Seth MacFarlane himself. He once admitted he never expected it to last more than a few seasons, let alone become a decades-long cultural mainstay. The resurrection brought more fame, more pressure, and more creative opportunities. And for MacFarlane, whose creative energy couldn't be boxed into a single animated sitcom, it became the turning point where Family Guy went from his full-time mission to just one piece of an expanding empire. By 2005, MacFarlane wasn't just running Family Guy, he was launching American Dad. That show, which debuted the same year as the revival, aimed for a different flavor of satire. While Family Guy relied on surreal cutaways and shock humor, American Dad leaned into long-form storytelling and character development. In many ways, it became the show where MacFarlane could scratch a different kind of creative itch, one that didn't rely on cutaway gags.
Oh, don't worry about him. That's just a nobody who lives in the basement. A nobody? Who farted? Nobody!
Not long after, the Cleveland show followed in 2009, spinning off one of Family Guy's most beloved supporting characters. While it never reached the same heights as its parent series, it further proved that MacFarlane was building something bigger than a single show. He was crafting a universe, one where animated sitcoms can intersect, overlap, and dominate Fox's Sunday night lineup. But with every new project, his attention was stretched thinner. And so, unable to handle it all, he needed to cut away from some. At first, he stepped back from American Dad to pay attention to Family Guy.
Dealing with these two shows, and I didn't really feel like I was really running either one. And so I made the choice to delegate it to Mike Barker and Matt Weitzman, who I'd co-created it with, and go back and continue nurturing Family Guy.
But then Family Guy would take the next hit for his absence, and then came Hollywood. In 2012, MacFarlane shocked the entertainment world with Ted, a raunchy buddy comedy about a talking bear that made over $500 million at the box office. Suddenly, MacFarlane wasn't just an animation mogul, he was a bankable live-action director. Ted gave him the green light to dive deeper into filmmaking, and he followed up with A Million Ways to Die in the West in 2014, where he not only wrote and directed but starred alongside Charlize Theron and Liam Neeson. Somewhere between fart jokes and Oscar appearances, Seth MacFarlane was evolving, or maybe just diversifying. His love of musicals and crooning, long hinted at in Family Guy's elaborate musical numbers, took center stage. He released Grammy-nominated jazz albums, performed with symphony orchestras, and hosted big band television specials that revealed a different side of his artistic soul, one that wasn't trying to get a laugh every 10 seconds, but to genuinely move people. He became a kind of modern-day Sinatra with a twisted sense of humor. But even as his creative range expanded, fans began noticing that Family Guy didn't quite feel the same. Even Seth MacFarlane became unsure of what the Griffin family was even all about.
Who are the Griffins?
Well, I'm not sure who they are now, but when I was there, the family was always designed to be a very region-specific.
Sure, MacFarlane's voice was still there. Literally. Peter, Stewie, and Brian continued to sound the same, but his name started showing up less and less in the writing credits. Behind the scenes, the engine that once ran on his relentless involvement was shifting gears. In interviews, MacFarlane became increasingly candid about his changing relationship with the show. As early as the 2010s, he was openly admitting he thought Family Guy had run its course. In 2011, he said the show should have ended several seasons ago, suggesting it had already passed its prime. This wasn't a creator clinging to his baby, this was someone who recognized when a project had outlived its original vision. But then Seth also believed newer writers could give the show a much better direction, and so he removed himself from the writer's room.
I talk to like people in their 20s today, they almost know more about it than I do. How to keep it fresh is always the concern. I mean, I'm not in the writer's room, I haven't been in the writer's room for about 10 years.
Then came The Orville in 2017, a sci-fi drama comedy hybrid that allowed MacFarlane to live out his love for Star Trek and space opera storytelling. This wasn't just another comedy project. The Orville proved MacFarlane wanted to be taken seriously as a writer, actor, and showrunner outside of animated sitcoms. It was a departure in tone, theme, and even maturity. He wasn't just diversifying, he was transforming.
We now return to The Orville on Fox.
Why do you hate that show so much?
Because it's preventing me from doing my work here at Family Guy.
And if there was any lingering doubt that MacFarlane had emotionally stepped away from Family Guy, the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike sealed it. When the strike hit, MacFarlane was one of the first high-profile showrunners to walk off the job in solidarity. And unlike some, who quietly returned to manage logistics, he didn't come back. He outright paused all involvement with Family Guy, saying he could not, in good conscience, contribute creatively while the people who kept the industry running were fighting for fair treatment. He only returned once the strike ended at the end of September 2023 and agreements had been reached. The next month, October 2023, season 22 of the show premiered. But his return was only in the voicing capacity, not an involvement in the directing of the show. So while his voice work continues, contractually and nostalgically, MacFarlane's day-to-day involvement has dwindled.
And if you're me, then why do you sound like my dog?
Because I'm also the voice of your dog, Brian. Wait, you do my voice too? Yeah, I do your voice.
The show is now run by Alex Sulkin and Rich Apple, longtime collaborators who took over showrunner duties. The writing room evolved too, and the jokes too. That one went downhill or improved depending on which fan you ask. But from Seth MacFarlane's mouth, his non-involvement is the perfect excuse to defend himself when modern Family Guy jokes go way off the mark.
You do something really bad and the joke that's way over the line, I can just absolve myself. Well, I don't work there.
Gone are the tightly structured satirical arcs and musical experiments of the early seasons. Instead, the tone has drifted. Less sharp political humor, more meme-ready randomness. It's not just the jokes that feel different, it's the heart. For many fans, the difference is clear. The golden years had a purpose, even when that purpose was pure chaos. Now, the show feels like it's spinning plates, desperately trying to stay relevant in a landscape it once defined. The cutaways are still there, the characters still sound the same, but the energy has shifted. Reddit threads and YouTube essays echo a shared sentiment. It just doesn't feel like Family Guy anymore. MacFarlane, while still echoing through the voices of Peter and Stewie, no longer steers the ship. He created a cultural juggernaut, yes, but he also walked away from it. However, fans still want to know what the real motive behind him leaving was. At first glance, Seth MacFarlane's exit from Family Guy may look like a classic Hollywood case of moving on, but peel back at the layers, especially in his own words, and a more complex picture emerges. Yes, it's partly about burnout, but it's also about creative evolution, cultural dissonance, and a growing sense that he'd outgrown the very show that made him a household name. Let's start with the obvious, burnout. Seth was just 24 years old when Family Guy premiered. That's not just young, that's absurdly young to become the head of a primetime animated series and voice nearly half the characters.
What? Are we giving Seth's voice a rest?
And to be tasked with keep this running for 20 years, that was a lot to ask. But for a while he did. But over time, he couldn't devote the same level of full attention to his first love, and that was a problem for him, because, according to Seth, he is the all or nothing kind of guy.
And my brain won't do that. I either got to be completely out or completely in. And when I was completely out, there was something freeing about it.
So Family Guy inevitably fell into the nothing category. But this wasn't just burnout, it was also a form of creative claustrophobia. Seth cut his teeth in animation, but he evolved past it. Seth moved on to projects like Ted, Million Ways to Die in the West, and the Orville, and even his musical work shows a broader creative appetite, one that Family Guy could no longer satisfy. The typecasting was a problem for Seth. For all his accolades, MacFarlane had struggled to escape the identity of the Family Guy guy. But long before Stewie Griffin's first evil monologue, MacFarlane had already left his mark on nearly every iconic cartoon of the 90s. He was part of the creative teams behind Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Laboratory, Cow and Chicken, and more. So Seth's conscious detachment from the show was as much about identity as it was about output. Letting go wasn't just a logical decision, it was existential. Then there's the Fox factor.
I'm not gonna kill those kids. If they die, I'll have nothing to watch on Wednesdays. Other than the fine programs on Fox.
While MacFarlane doesn't openly bash the network, there's an unmistakable hint of frustration in how he describes his current relationship to the show. He hasn't written for it since around 2009 or 2010. That's over a decade of creative detachment. The man who once lived and breathed the series now clocks in like he's recording for a podcast he half remembers creating. This isn't a creator fighting studio notes, this is someone who quietly surrendered the battlefield and never looked back. Ironically, what helped Seth step away was something many creators struggle with, letting go of control. He says he leaves shows in the hands of their showrunners and doesn't meddle.
And that was when I kind of handed it off to the showrunners who've been running it ever since. Yeah, these days I do voiceover on Family Guy, but
that detachment, that absence of ego is rare and likely the only reason Family Guy has continued functioning in his wake. But if MacFarlane has moved on, what about Family Guy itself? The most fascinating part of the whole saga isn't that Seth left, it's that Family Guy didn't fall apart when he did. The show continues to be renewed, the cutaways still cut, Peter still falls down the stairs. The ratings may not be what they were, but the show lumbers on, undeterred by its creator's absence. It's a strange phenomenon, a series that's both hollowed out and somehow still functional, like a ghost ship with just enough crew to keep it afloat. But fans are starting to ask the big question, should it continue? Some argue it should be granted a final season, a chance to go out on its own terms. Others want a reboot, a reinvention, something to shake the formula. But if we are to look at it in all honesty, the show exists in a state of paradox. It's both nostalgic and outdated, timeless and out of touch. Consistent, yet creatively adrift. Without Seth at the helm, it's less a passion project and more a self-operating franchise. Like a mall Santa who keeps showing up every December, even if nobody remembers hiring him.
So, little boy, what would you like for Christmas?
So what's next? The possibilities include a clean wrap-up, a bold reinvention, or indefinite continuation. Each path comes with risk, but one thing's for sure. Whatever future Family Guy has, Seth MacFarlane won't be the one steering the ship. And that perhaps is the most telling part of all. When asked if Family Guy could go on forever, MacFarlane replied with something cryptic yet profoundly honest.
It really could be on forever.
Could be. I mean, I'll die at some point.
While Seth MacFarlane truly built something iconic, every great run eventually has to evolve or end. So his departure from Family Guy felt inevitable.
I am inevitable.
Sorry, this is Family Guy, but let's be honest, the show hasn't been the same without him. The cracks are showing, and for many fans, they're impossible to ignore. So what was once beloved has become widely hated. To fully understand what went wrong with Family Guy after Seth's exit, check out this video.